Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope you're all doing well today. Today I've got an amazing, yet terrifying group of cryptid encounters to share with you. I've got Dogman, I've got Unidentified, and I've got something on the Kandahar giant as well. Before we get into these encounters/accounts, a couple links I'd like to share. As you know, I rely on my Patreon, my PayPal, and my merch to help this channel to continue to grow and go. Those links are in the description below. I also have a second channel for creepypasta, fanfiction, and scary voice acting. Stories that don't fit on this channel. Now, if that's anything that you're into, follow that link and give those stories a listen. You may just like what you hear. I also started a GoFundMe page a while back to help raise some money for Urbex cryptid hunting and ghost hunting videos. So far, I have an EVP recorder, an SLS cam, and a couple trail cams. I'd like to thank some subscribers for generously donating. Thank you, guys. Also, I have a small commercial for Q centerfire rifle at the end of these encounters. Please stick around and check that out. And with that, guys, I've taken enough of your time. Let's get on with these encounters. Shall we? Today's first encounter is a possible Dogman Shapeshifter from Michigan. When I was a kid, I lived a good 30 minutes to an hour from the nearest town. One night, when we were heading home from getting my mother from work, we found ourselves on one of the not-so-familiar dirt roads, which wasn't too uncommon. When turning a corner, from what I could see from the back seat of the van, I saw what looked like a German Shepherd. But it turned more into a Doberman Pinscher, along with a few other shifts of dog breeds. No one lived in that area. It was one of the few roads with absolutely no homes on it. There's no way the dog could have gotten out of someone's yard. Something I distinctly remember, along with the sudden changes of the creature, it never had a tail. I know that skinwalkers tend to be able to be spotted in disguise as an animal without having a tail. This happened in Midland, Michigan, in Hope Township, at least I believe it did. A couple of years back, I'd asked my dad if he remembered that thing, and he said yes. I asked him if he had seen a tail on it, and he also said no. My mom and sister were either asleep in the van or too distracted with something else to see it. Neither of them remember it. I know this isn't very dramatic or super scary, but to think a possible shapeshifter in my hometown disturbs me. Today's second encounter sends chills down my spine. I have an experience I have not told many people. No one seems to believe me except my family. This makes me think they have all had similar experiences. They believe talking about these things welcomes them. My family had a ranch growing up in Northern California. It's been in our family since the early 1900s. It's surrounded by forest about 100 feet away from the home. Cowboys would pay to take a bath on their travels and sleep in the stable. There's still a sign up for baths. We converted that stable into a home after the original house my grandfather built burnt down in the 50s. Very isolated. My whole life, we would spend weekends up there. No phone, no cable, just electricity. If you got hurt or cut your hand in the wood splitter, tough luck, it's an hour outside of town. It was just the very basic necessities. Wood burning, stove, old appliances, everything. Despite growing up there, we always carried guns, even to the bathroom that was connected to the house, but you still had to go out the front door to get to it. It wasn't an outhouse, but kind of. As kids, we always had to go in groups of 3 or 1 kid, 1 adult. I had little things happen that terrified me, but was always told not to acknowledge it. When I was 21, my grandfather was having a hard time staying there all weekend, and I loved it up there, so I moved in with my dog. He was a big staffy pit bull and went everywhere with me in my little tiny red 1993 Miata. I loved that car. This was around 2009. My cell phone worked up there, but I had it set on a specific shelf, and it was pretty insufficient at times with text, but I could always call out standing on a chair by the shelf. I had a best friend who was an asshole. He came up every day, but never slept over. It was really scary up there. I would watch movies and listen to the radio. Not having cable even added to the whole isolation. So one day, it's a super windy day, but the power, by some miracle, stayed on. There was one light above the barn that barely reached my house. It had two front doors, one in the kitchen and one in my room on the same side of the house, about 15 to 20 feet apart. My dog starts going crazy. I either assume it's the wind or a mountain lion, and I'm not about ready to let him out. The screen is kind of rattling with everything else, and then I hear this right outside of my door. I swear on my son, I hear this tiny voice say, "Hello! Hello! Hello!" It sounded like a very small person, but not a child. No knocking, no response to anything I said, just the same word over and over, but like they were trying to get it right. The L's sounded like R's. I was so petrified, and my dog is freaking out and his hair's up. I'm calling my best friend. He's on his way, but he's like an hour away. Everyone loses service up there. I called my grandfather, and he was mad, saying, "Grab the gun and do not open that fucking door." I was crying and begging for it to answer me. I asked it if it needed help. Does it want my phone? I was so scared that it would only say hello. I told it if it tells me its name, I would let it in. But nothing. Everything felt so wrong. I didn't try to peek out of the window. It was old glass, the kind that looks uneven if it makes sense. Very easily broken. My best friend arrived first, then my uncle. Before they got there, it became less and less, then nothing. There's no way a person was wandering out there. The way to my stoop was all mud. The stable is kind of on a small cliff, so walking to the stoop where the stairs are is uphill from the house. No footprints, animal or human, in the mud. Nothing touched or taken, not even from the fridge that was outside near the bathroom area. I moved back to town not long after and never slept there again. The way my uncle acted when he got there, like he knew there was nothing to be found, and he didn't ask me many questions. He told me to keep my dog on a leash, and that was it. No one talked about it the next day except for me. A few years ago, I had an experience with something in my apartment, but in a completely different town, and not anything like this. I feel like since that happened to me, I kind of marked. I do remember being very scared of the woods growing up on the ranch, like I was being watched. Maybe I picked up on my parents' cues, or maybe I really was being watched. Either way, I love the ranch, but I don't go up there anymore. One more thing, despite generations of family going up every few days to care for the property, no one has lived there full time since the house burned down. And we haven't kept animals up there either. No more livestock, not even a barn cat. One thing that bothered me for a long time after was the inflection he was using, as if it was a question at first. The way it spoke. I don't think it could say anything else, or I think it would have. It was confident and kind of menacing. The cadence was way off, like it was meticulously slowing its speech to sound human. But what bothers me most about the affliction is that it couldn't say anything else, and didn't know my language. Then, how did it know to phrase it in a question? I used to wonder if maybe it had caught someone in the woods before and copied its words. That's exactly what I'd say. If I thought someone was following me. Hello? 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 Sort of thing. I still think about it a lot. My heart still races, remembering its voice. Today's third terrifying encounter. Let me start off with my first encounter with this being. My friend and I were on our way back to my house when I turned down the road that I live on. A few feet down the road, we both see these pairs of eyes. Orangish, yellow eyes. Living in Indiana, covered in cornfields in both directions, as far as you can see, I think it's just an animal, so I start to slow down. The eyes are not moving, like a normal animal eyes do. They usually just scurry away or at least turn and disappear into the cornfield. Now, the closer I get, I can't describe how I could see the details of this being because it's so dark, like it completely lacked light at all. My headlights weren't illuminating this being at all. But basically, it looked like a crouched, perched skeleton. It was completely bones, but somehow still huge. At this point, we're pretty close, so I speed up, thinking some Jeeper Creepers shit's about to happen and it's gonna take off with my car. As we pass the being, staring directly into its eyes to see what it is, it disappears. I look over at my friend and ask, "You saw that shit, right?" Now, every time we talk, this will come up. My next experience with this creature was about a week later. The next time I see the entity, I was near my road, about 5 miles from my house. Same orange eyes. It was walking across the road from right to left towards someone's yard. And when I say walking, I mean on all fours. It was completely black and huge this time. It had a tail that was probably 3 feet long. As it was passing from the right side of the road to the left, it stopped in the middle of the road. Mind you, I'm driving straight for this thing, 60 miles an hour. I slow down and it stopped on the yellow line in the middle of the road, and it turned and looked at me and my boyfriend in the car. I'm about 20 feet away, so I'm slowing way down so it doesn't completely destroy my car. It just turned and kept walking, but the thing was so damn huge that it glided through the yard. When we passed the house, the dog thing was nowhere in sight. This house had security lights on it, and it was well lit outside. No sign of this thing anywhere. The next time it was seen was by my boyfriend. This was about 2 weeks after the initial incident. He was outside smoking a cigarette on my cabin thing porch. It's just a cabin we used to store our pool stuff in. He sees the entity standing this time at the exact edge of my property, taller than the corn that's standing next to. It was at the end of August, early September, so the corn is very tall. It stood there, the same orangish yellow eyes, watching my boyfriend run into the house. The next incident was recently. These occurrences happened back in 2017. I don't talk about this creature because every time I do, it seems to come back. Like it knows that I'm telling people about it. Almost as if talking about it gave it some sort of power or more energy. I don't know. So the next incident wasn't me. I only had the 2 initial encounters. I got a call from my friend the other night, the same friend that saw it with me the first time, and he was frantic. He said, "I saw it again, I saw it." I immediately knew what he was talking about, and I asked him where and what had happened. He told me he was driving the back way home because of construction on the main highway. So as he's driving, he sees this tall, black figure glide across the road, and he's watching it move, and as it gets to the corn, it disintegrates and turns into smoke and travels into the cornfield. He watched the smoke dart through the cornfield. Can someone tell me I'm not psychotic and this might have a name? I haven't seen the entity since 2007. I don't want to ever again because of the overwhelming feeling of evil. I'm not religious by any means. This thing reminds me of something I saw when I did the Ouija board way too many times in high school. It starts with the letter Z. I saw him standing at the foot of my bed and a few other places in my house. But it gives me a feeling of just pure dread and death, everything negative. I'm not sure if these two things are connected or not. I doubt it, honestly, but the feelings are the same. Today's fourth, not encounter, but info, is just a little something that I found interesting. The U.S. military killed a giant in Kandahar. In 2002, a biblical giant with flaming red hair was killed by U.S. soldiers in Afghanistan. But why did U.S. Special Forces kill a giant in Kandahar and try to cover it up? These gigantic creatures were the offspring of the sons of God, the angels, and the daughters of man. In Genesis 6:4 and Numbers 13:33, the Bible speaks of giants populating the earth. When ordinary people saw them, they said, "We were in our own sight as grasshoppers, and so we were in their sight." What's more, these giants didn't just exist in biblical times, but live on through present day. The battle with the Kandahar giant. The United States military men encountered a giant red-haired beast, the Kandahar giant, along a goat path near a cave in rural Afghanistan. The giant, who was at least 18 feet tall, appeared with a loud, thundering roar. The soldiers opened fire and shot the giant many times in the face, neck, head, and chest. The battle only lasted 30 seconds. Near the deceased giant's body, the soldiers noticed a 9-foot spear made of Talabanithrin stone, a commonly known material used by ancient aliens 13,000 years ago. The cover-up. If the U.S. military encountered such a beast and managed to kill it, why would they hide it and try to cover up the story? Wouldn't this be one of the biggest stories of the century, to bring forth the body of the previous living giant and show the world such beasts exist? Sky demons. While the soldiers were doing an immediate autopsy on the giant's body, the actual giant of Kandahar, a gray smoke, oozed from the giant's mouth and formed into a sky demon. The demon warned the soldiers of an up-and-coming junior demon known as Barack Hussein Obama, who would take power 6 years later in 2008 and plan to destroy and bankrupt America. Giants and their connection with ancient aliens. What scared the Afghan U.S. military soldiers the most was the Talabanithrin stone spear they had found near the body. At the time, many experts believed Talabanithrin stone could only have existed some 13,000 years ago. But now, they were seeing it in person in the year 2002. This caused panic within the military unit because they knew that there were aliens being kept in a remote mountainous area in the United States. Is it possible imprisoned aliens in the United States sent biblical giants into Afghanistan war zones where American soldiers were patrolling in order to secretly destroy them with the Talabanithrin stone spear? But the biggest question is why? Why would the U.S. military cover up the dead giant? If you have read the scriptures of the ancient covenant of crustacean times, you would know that biblical giants controlled the water supply in America at the time. Water. And those same giants poisoned rivers and water systems with chemicals that turned frogs and other amphibians. Now it's becoming clear why the cover-up happened. The U.S. military did not want the public knowing that these giants are alive because they could still be controlling the water supply in America today. If the public knew that they were alive, then there would be panic amongst civilians, knowing that our dear frogs could be in danger. What now? Be vigilant. We know that the giant was killed in Kandahar. If one was killed, there could be many more. And they could even be more dangerous knowing they are controlled by aliens. So be sure to boil your water. Alright guys, some really cool yet terrifying encounters. And some conspiracy. You know, I just threw that one in there, the Kandahar giant, because I found it a little entertaining. Don't give me shit for it, alright? It was funny. I don't believe in any of the poisoning of the water supplies in America and the prophecy of Barack Hussein Obama coming to light. It was just for fun, okay? But the 3 encounters prior to that were definitely real. The very first one in Michigan is definitely a shapeshifter or changeling of some sort. Really cool story because not only did the person mention Skinwalker, but they didn't mention it being a true Skinwalker because they knew that these Skinwalkers aren't in Michigan. They're in Navajo land, you know. There's other things out there, shapeshifters, changelings, stuff like that. The second encounter, Northern California. Now that one's a little more interesting because we always hear that these Navajo skinwalkers like to communicate and they have a hard time mocking or mimicking us. A subscriber the other day just said we should call them word stealers, I believe was what they used, which sounds good to me. I like changeling and shapeshifter, but that was terrifying. I mean, you're up at some remote cabin, no one's with you, you got your pit bull going absolutely ape nuts, and you don't know what's going on. Your uncle shows up and, you know, your grandfather's yelling, get a gun and don't open the door. Just complete craziness. The third encounter, I'd like to hear what you guys think on this one. I don't have an idea yet. I'm gonna have to sit down and think more about it. Other than that, once again, the Kandahar giant thing was just done for fun, so don't be hating, guys. And with that, guys, thanks for all of your support, and I bid you farewell. The honey badger. Zoologists tell us pound for pound is the most fearless and ferocious mammal to walk the earth, untamed and aggressive, a critter not to be messed with. The Dogman. Cryptozoologists said this creature is cunning, savage, and godless. Two of the most terrifying beasts meet, only one will come out alive. Q centerfire rifles gave humans a fighting chance. The honey badger. 300 Blackout, original and unique. The Dogman and other cryptids will now know fear. The honey badger, the fix, and the sugar weasel. Click on the link and check out all of Q's badass firearms, accessories, and swag.